Welcome to Transnational Competition Law course. And dear learner, today we are going to discuss about the strategies for competition remedies, and we will also looking at how these strategies of competition remedies try to look at the entire remedial aspect from the standpoint of the consumers in the market. So these two broad aspects in the arena of the competition remedies we will try to cover in today's lecture. Dear learner and viewer, you can vividly recall that our previous discussion on the competition law remedies pertains to the nature of competition remedies. And while discussing the nature of competition remedies, we have been equally very responsive to look at as to what are the major problems which have a tendency to influence the entire regime of not only the enforcement of extraterritorial application of competition law, but advancing of the competition remedies in matters of extraterritorial application of competition law. Then we get abreast ourselves with the kinds and the classification of the competition remedies, and we have taken note of the relative merits and demerits and overall delivery of the structural and the behavioral competition remedies. We have also underlined the aims and objective of the competition remedies, and in that reference we have taken note of the fact that how any competition remedies under its major goals, aims and object addresses three fundamentals. Number one, the restorative, preventive and the competitive remedies, and saying that the competitive remedies is what goes without saying, but we hear saying the competition remedies means to get into the deep of the implementation of the competitive remedies in implementable aspect, practical aspect of restoration of the competition, and having a very real world scenario and the view of restoring the competition in the market under the competition remedies, that how we can construct a parallel and a contingent plan for addressing the infringing conduct in the market, and how we have a system of dislodging the anti-competitive market situations in advancing the competitive remedies. We had also an occasion to discuss that the aims and objective of the competition remedies, which happens to be restorative, competitive and preventive in character, but how it assumes a very practical dimensions when any competition authority happens to dwell on the issue and happens in right earnest to set the range of the competition remedies, in that sense that what are the prime benchmarks, considerations and goals before competition dispute authorities, competition resolution authorities in auguring competition remedies and justice. And we precisely located to look at the entire effectiveness syndrome. We have also tried to gauge that how competition remedies should strike a due proportion and balance, and how the doctrine of proportionality can visit the competition remedies, and how best we can have a linkage of the infringement to our competition remedies. Now we are going to discuss, because we have been in a better position to understand the challenges before the competition dispute resolution authorities, and as well as the market, and as well as the competition law scholars who have profusely contributed to the nature and extent of the competition remedies, and the national competition agencies at national, regional and international level have also come out of large number of publications dwelling on the aspect of the competition remedies, should look at and try to adopt some very foolproof mechanism and strategy for competition remedies. In that reference, we are discussing the strategies for competition remedies, and then while discussing the competition remedies, we try to see that any strategy for the competition remedies entails that the competition remedies, competition agencies should launch or take remedial action, or to adopt a remedial process of selling of subsidiary businesses, subsidiary interest, subsidiary investment, meaning thereby that the strategies of the competition remedies should essentially take note of the concept and the notion of divestiture, and divesting of the assets, and how the divesting of the assets of a particular firm are to be acquired by the other. So, not only the one who is divesting the asset, but the one who happens to acquire the asset, both are equally important, and any kind of a strategy on competition remedies should not lose sight of that fact, but it should be equally be looking at the entire competition remedies from the divestiture's point of view and the acquisition point of view, and it has to strike a kind of a balance while advancing any kind of a competition remedies, so that the action, the process, the selling of all kind of a subsidiaries of the business interest and the investment should adopt a very healing touch, and shall have a very correctional measure or a correctional justice of the competition dispute. In that reference, dear learner and viewer, it is here that we have to adopt a strategy, what is known as fix it first. So we have to fix it first approach that is required in our strategy of advancing the competition remedies. In that reference, if we look at what we mean to say by fix it first approach to our strategic dimensions of the competition remedies, then certainly an obvious reference to the divestiture approach is the sine qua non. Thereby, dear learner and viewer, when we talk of divesting of the assets, when you talk of acquisition of the assets, or when we take divest teacher approach as a whole in our honing out of the competition remedies strategies, we find we find that there are several ways in which competition agencies can improve their rate of success with the entire divestiture proceedings. What we see in the divestiture proceedings or action or approach, that this is a kind of an action or approach or a process of selling of subsidiary businesses, interest or investment. So, as we mentioned earlier, that the foremost goal is to see the fix it first approach is logically connected to the entire process of divestment or divestiture approach, wherein a divestiture most commonly result in the market from the management decision to cease operating a business unit. Why? Because it is not part of the company's core competencies. So once it ceases operating as a business unit, and when it is considered that it is beyond the core competency of the particular company, and then we have to look at the legitimacy of the managerial decision in that respect, and taking all these consideration in mind, we can only have, unless and until we fix it approach applies to the entire process of divestiture. And in that respect, the first strategy of the competition remedies happens to be the divestiture approach. When we try to look the fix it first approach or remedy as a matter of a strategy of the competition remedy, we can put in a magnified manner that the fix it approach is one of the tools to impose a fix it first remedy, meaning thereby that what in a popular jargon we can say that the remedy is a broad term. And when we say it's a broad term, then we mean to suggest that the interim remedy and the final remedy and the remedy which the competition dispute authority deems it necessary to advance is the third kind of the remedies. So, the strategy of the competition remedy here simply implies under the fix it approach is to fix it first remedy, that as to what kind of the remedial packages are to be offered at the first instance, which is badly required by the parties for an easy compliance. And coming to the level of compliance for the teacher duties which can be assigned and which can be assumed. Here, dear learner and viewer, what is important for us to understand in the strategy of the competition dispute is the fact that we have not only to understand the divestiture approach and the process, but we have to see that what are the inherent divestiture duties which can be assumed or can be imposed prior to the consummation of the merger transaction. And this is what is entailed in fix it first approach besides the divestiture approach to the competition remedies. And then it carries additional significance for us to look at that the fix it first approach or fix it first remedy essentially see that what can be the boundaries and what can be the capacity of the divestiture duties in matters of acquisition or divestment of the assets, but prior to the consummation of the merger transactions. The having said about the strategies of the competition remedies in terms of divestiture approach and fix it first approach, we will try to see the other dimensions of the strategy of the competition remedies that brings us closer to the identity of the acquirer. So, we are moving from the identity of divestiture or divestiture's duty, we are moving to acquirer's rights and duties. And we can understand the rights of acquirers and duties of the acquirers as we understood the rights and the duties of the divestitures. First, we have to identify the acquirers, and any strategy on the competition remedies needs to very clearly spell out as to who are the acquirers and what are their identity. It is something like we can say in a company law jargon is the lifting of the corporate veil, and unless we pierce the veil, unless we lift the veil, unless we remove that veil, we cannot identify, we cannot see that who are the people in the entire divestitures process and proceedings. Those who happens to be acquirer, but what are the identity of the acquirer? So we have to look the identity of the acquirer. So in that respect, what we see that The strategy of the competition remedies offers a complementary tool to us in requiring or facilitating that we need some kind of an consent and approval of the competition agencies for identification of the acquirer in the process of divestiture approach and the fix-it approach. The strategy of identification of the acquirer in the competition remedies carries an additional importance, and it is very significant for us to pay attention to the scope of the assets that the parties are going to divest and the parties who are going to acquire. So, the precise attention in any strategy for competition dispute is to be directed to the scope of the asset from the point of view of the divestiture and the acquirer. So, what what we can see in the entire spectrum of strategies for competition remedies, that the competition agencies should launch a kind of a strategy wherein the goal on the one hand happens to require the divestiture of the least amount of asset, and on the other hand what we require the restoration and maintaining of the competition, because that is the penultimate goal of the competition remedies, the restoration of the competition in the market. So, any kind of a launching strategy by any competition dispute authority or the agency is to see that the divestiture proceedings or the process should be of least amount of the assets so that it cannot have an impact overall on the maintenance of the competition, and to see that very well the competition in the market can be restored back. Thus, the other launching strategy of any kind of a competition dispute authority or the agency happens to be that the entire institutional and administrative mechanism of dispute resolution should assure that the divested assets will certainly enable for the creation of a stand-alone business, or in other words, we can say that it is the duty of the competition dispute resolution authority that whatever is divested, it should be backed with some relevant commercial arrangement, some parallel commercial arrangement, and it tries to see in a broader perspective that unless we have some very contingent, parallel and concurrent commercial arrangement to the divestiture proceedings, then it will be very difficult to allow any acquirer to compete. And once in the strategy of competition remedies, if any competition dispute agency or competition authority fails to see or realize that how the relevant commercial arrangement are carved out and chalked out, and how it has given a leverage to the acquirers to compete properly in the market, because once the entire divestiture proceedings are open, at no point of time any competition remedy can afford to see the backlashes of the competition. Rather, it must see that the maintenance of the competition and as well as the restoration of the competition can also go along with. So, in that respect, that the parallel and concurrent commercial arrangement of all the stakeholders and to create an easy access and create a kind of a facilitating mechanism for the acquirers of the assets in the divestiture proceedings to well compete and complete the arrangement and agreement. So that is the another kind of the strategy which the competition law agency and dispute resolution authority should take care while having a kind of a dispute settlement mechanism, or we can say that as a competition lawyer or advocates, once we are in the process of looking at the strategies for competition remedies, then both has to see with a clear stance that the entire divestiture process and approach, fix it remedy approach, and identification of the acquirer should be done with a foolproof commercial arrangement and the restoration of competition in the market. With this, dear learner and viewer, I think that the understanding of the litigational and as well as dispute resolution strategy in the regime of competition remedies and its consequent application, extraterritorial application of competition law and transnational competition law, will dispel some of the misgiving and will capacitate us to see that how our strategy are to be honed out. With this, I conclude and I thank and I wish a happy learning. Thank you very much.